Previously in Dark Places.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet I ask you, is not an alien force already among us? What could be more alien to the universal aspirations of our peoples than war and the threat of war?
From 659 feet, way up in the Appalachian Mountains, this is In Dark Places. I'm Junebug Fugit, and I may or may not have classified documents hiding in my bedroom. That always cracked me up when he would talk about the alien. I think that's Spanish for alien. I don't know. I can't laugh though. I used to call them aliens up until I was like 16 or so. So, I feel your pain there, Ronnie. This week on the show, we're going to be catching up on some news items that have been kind of piling up on us. We've got some aliens and Men in Black and Mothman. Speaking of Mothman, on the Mothman Prophecies movie, there was a lot of stuff with electronics and weird sounds and junk like that was kind of associated with Indrid Cold. And it wasn't so much in the book, I don't remember. I don't think it had anything to do with electronics in the book, but maybe it did. Back on March 2nd, 2012, there were some tornadoes near here in Syersville, Kentucky. And they went straight across the river into Warfield, Kentucky, and did a lot of damage. And it's crazy because I don't think there's ever been any tornadoes in this area because we have mountains here to protect us. So it was a very rare sight. No weather manipulation at all, I'm sure. A few weeks after that, I want to say it was on March 31st. I do remember it was a Saturday, but I'm not sure which Saturday. I think March 31st, though. I was getting ready to go to work. And I was in the bedroom getting my clothes all together and junk. And I started hearing this weird radio sound. You know how, like, when you're kind of far away from a radio, and you can kind of hear that there's people talking, but you don't know what they're saying. And you just kind of hear like a that kind of thing. Well, I was hearing that in the bedroom. And I couldn't figure out where it was coming from. I thought, what in the world was that? And I thought maybe one of the neighbors across the street was maybe listening to a radio and like washing their car or something. They had a radio on and looked out the window and I didn't see anything, but I kept hearing that noise in the bedroom and it got my attention because it was weird. So I stepped out on the porch and looked over around the neighbor's house and stuff, and I didn't hear the radio noise at all when I was out on the porch. And I was like, well, that's kind of weird. They turned it off about the time I got out the door. So I just went back into the bedroom and kept getting my clothes together and stuff. And I heard it again. It was, still going in the bedroom. And I could not tell where it was coming from. I could hear it coming from like all around me. And just constant, like two men were talking on a radio. And by this point I was determined. I wanted to figure out where this was coming from. So I got down on my hands and knees looking under the bed. I thought maybe that Brandon had left a radio turned on under the bed or something. It had kind of fell under the bed. And I didn't really figure out where it was coming from. It was just like it was coming up from the floor or something. Didn't see any radio there. Kept walking around in the bedroom trying to figure out where it was coming from. And there was this one electrical outlet next to the bed that it sounded really loud. Next to that electrical outlet. I don't know why. But it sounded like the radio noise was coming out of that outlet. So I was like, well, that's stupid. There's no way it's coming from the outlet. There's no radio there. There's nobody been under the house or anything. There's no radios around. So I stepped back out on the porch again, and I didn't hear a thing. The neighbor's garage door was closed. They were not out in their yard. I went back in the house, and I heard it again. I started listening, trying to figure out if I could make out any of the words, because all I was hearing was like that static noise. And then finally, at one point, I did make out the word tornado. See, it comes full circle. Tornado from March 2nd, 2012. But I was thinking, oh my goodness, this is like some kind of Indrid Cold thing or something, and the voice on this invisible radio is warning me that there's going to be another tornado. And it never did happen, though. But yeah, that's the story about the time I hung out with Indrid Cold. Never did figure out where that noise was coming from. And it was getting late by that time, so I just went on to work. Never heard it again. And now here is the Nicolas Cage Meltdown of the Week.
Sarah! 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 Sarah!
Poor guy. I talked about hearing my weird little radio signal back in 2012. Here's a radio signal 9 billion light years away. What it means and where it came from. By Julia Musto. Thanks, Julia. A radio signal nearly 9 billion light years away from Earth was captured in a new recording detected by India's giant meter wave radio telescope. McGill University said in release that this marked the first time this type of radio signal has been detected at such a large distance. Space.com reported that the signal could mean scientists can start investigating some of the earliest stars and galaxies. This is not the first time scientists have received a mysterious signal from outer space. Last July, astronomers at MIT and other universities in the US and Canada detected a persistent signal from a distant galaxy of unknown astrophysical origin, and in 2020, a mysterious signal from Proxima Centauri made waves. But do these signals mean we're not alone? The answer right now is no. Although an intentional signal has been sent into space. Researchers said in 2021, according to Nature, that the Proxima Centauri signal was likely human-made radio interference and the source of the fast radio burst. The signal was suspected to be either a radio pulsar or a magnetar, both of which are types of neutron stars. Never heard of a magnetar. There are not many things in this universe that emit strictly periodic signals, said Danielle Michelli, a postdoc in MIT's Cavalli Institute for Astrophysics and Space Research, said at the time. Examples that we know in our own galaxy are radio pulsars and magnetars, which rotate and produce a beamed emission similar to an eye house. And we think this new signal could be a magnetar or pulsar on steroids. In this most recent case, properties of the signal indicate that it came from gaseous neutral hydrogen in a star-forming galaxy named SDSSJ0826 plus 5630. My favorite place. McGill said that the signal was emitted from the galaxy when the universe was only 4.9 billion years old. It's the equivalent to look back in time of 8.8 billion years. Kind of funny timing on all these weird signals and UFO reports and all these reports becoming declassified. Kind of makes you wonder, what are they planning next? And I think what they need to do is get the men in black on this deal. They'll get to the bottom of this. Our friend Tim Banal did a report on a Massachusetts couple seeing men in black following an odd UFO sighting. Thanks, Tim. In a strange case out of Massachusetts, a couple suspect that they may have been visited by the infamous Men in Black, following a particularly odd UFO sighting. The weird incident reportedly occurred early last month in the city of Boston. I've heard of it. And was relayed to the National UFO Reporting Center by the brother of one of the witnesses. He explained that a few weeks earlier, his sister and her boyfriend had watched a YouTube video about astronauts allegedly seeing UFOs. Future topic on the show. On the night in question, they went outside to smoke a cigarette at around 2:30 in the morning, and during that time reflected on the conspiracy theory as they gazed up at the moon. Within less than 5 seconds of talking about that out loud, the woman's brother said, the pair spotted a puzzling orb that was so bright the light illuminated their faces as if in the presence of fireworks. According to the witnesses, the peculiar UFO ascended silently into the sky while emitting spark-like elements before disappearing from sight. The timing of the curious sighting was not lost on the couple, as the woman's brother reported that they were pretty scared, considering the fact that just seconds before the UFO appeared, they were talking about alien encounters. They felt as if whatever it was heard them talking about that and wanted to prove their existence. It was more than just a coincidence. Within less than 5 seconds of talking about that out loud, the woman's brother said. However, the couple's experience became even stranger around an hour later when they went back outside to have another cigarette. It was then that, in a seemingly silent manner, a black sedan SUV pulled up across the street, and out of the vehicle stepped a man dressed entirely in black. This individual, the witnesses say, began to stare at them, and they soon noticed that there were 2 more people in similar attire standing at the end of the street. The pair of mysterious strangers were reportedly swaying back and forth as if they were trying to make out who or what they were. Eerily, the troubling trio simply silently watched the couple until the pair became so put off by the experience that they ran back inside their house. While it is entirely possible that the suspected men in black were merely normal people out late at night and not nefarious entities looking to silence UFO witnesses, the witnesses specifically noted that the facial features of the figures appeared to be all blurred out, despite their close proximity to the couple. Alas, when they called the police about the curious incident, their account was dismissed by the cops, who told them that they only accept reports of criminal activity, not UFO sightings. Ultimately, the woman's brother mused that, "My sister said this is the scariest thing she has ever encountered. The UFO sighting was scary enough, but the strange men in black who just so happened to be staring at them so late in the middle of the night was even more terrifying."
Led Zeppelin is back. Jimmy Page has digitally remastered all the classic tracks from Led Zeppelin. And now, Time Warner can deliver the exclusive 2-CD version of the Led Zeppelin remasters through this special TV offer. You'll get 26 songs, over 2 hours of classic rock and roll for 4 easy payments. And it's on sale now over the phone. You'll also get this free 30-minute interview with Jimmy Page, Robert Plant, and John Paul Jones.
Really seduced by rock and roll at an early age, that's for sure.
This offer is not available in any store. Call now to get this exclusive TV offer. 2 remastered CDs or cassettes, plus the free interviews delivered to your home. This offer won't last long, so write this number down and call now.
So have you heard of this one? The Doomsday Clock? A bunch of these rich, elite, unelected people have come up with a little thing called the Doomsday Clock. They decide that whenever this clock strikes midnight, that something huge is going to happen. Probably like doomsday or something. And, it don't have any basis in science, so don't question the science. But yeah, these guys. Ukraine war moves Doomsday Clock up to 90 seconds away from midnight by Seth Bordenstein. Thanks, Seth. With Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the specter of nuclear weapon use, Earth crept is closest to Armageddon, a science-orientated advocacy group said, moving its famous Doomsday Clock up to just 90 seconds before midnight. We are really closer to that doomsday, former Mongolian President Eljabarg Taskia said Tuesday at the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists' annual announcement rating how close humanity is from doing itself in. He and former Ireland President Mary Robinson joined scientists to underscore what they consider a gathering of several existential threats, with Russian leader Vladimir Putin's actions and words chief among them. People and scientists are warning us, and we have to wake up now, he said. The group started in 1947 to use a clock to symbolize the potential and likelihood of people doing something to end humanity. It moved the clock 10 seconds closer last year, making it the closest it has ever been to striking 12. It's been as much as 17 minutes from midnight after the end of the Cold War, but in the past few years the group has changed from counting down the minutes to midnight to counting down the seconds. We are sending a message that the situation is becoming more urgent, Bulletin President Rachel Bronson said at the online announcement. Crises are more likely to happen and have broader consequences and longer standing effects. And to emphasize the effect that Russia's invasion of Ukraine had on moving closer to theoretical doomsday, the group said that it was also announcing the clock movement in the Russian and Ukrainian languages for the first time. Putin has repeatedly raised the specter of nuclear use, says Steve Feder, another specter, dean of the graduate school and a public policy professor at the University of Maryland. Putin has given no indication that he's willing to accept defeat, said Federer. He might make desperate moves if no other options are available that he regards as acceptable. At the bulletin announcement also mentioned nuclear weapon proliferation in China, Iran, increasing its uranium enrichment, missile tests in North Korea, future pandemics from animal diseases, pathogens from lab mistakes. Yeah, mistakes. Shouldn't be studying that junk in a lab anyway. Technologies and worsening climate change as other threats to humanity. Climate change. The climate's changing because they keep changing it. It's man-made. Yeah. Catastrophic mutating event will strike the world in 2 years, report says. By Tim Newcomb. Thanks, Tim. The 2023 World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, has filled us with lots of uplifting predictions, like how companies will soon decide our brainwaves. The latest warns of a global catastrophic cyber event in the near future. The most striking finding that we've found is that 93% of cyber leaders and 86% of cyber business leaders believe that the geopolitical instability makes a catastrophic cyber event likely in the next 2 years. This far exceeds anything that we've seen in previous surveys, World Economic Forum Managing Director Jeremy Jurgens said during a presentation highlighting the World Economic Forum Global Security Outlet Report 2023. At the extreme unpredictability of these events, Jurgen cited a cyber attack recently aimed at shutting down Ukrainian military abilities that unexpectedly also closed off parts of electricity production across Europe, and the global challenges are only growing. This is a global threat, said Jurgen Stock, Secretary General of Interpol, during the presentation. It calls for a global response and enhanced and coordinated action. He said the increased profits that the multiple bad actors reap from cybercrime should encourage world leaders to work together to make it a priority as they face new sophisticated tools. One country that recently saw a massive cyber attack, Albania, is now working with larger allies in warding off the criminals, serving as a laboratory of sorts for folks to realize what is coming. Edi Rama, Albania's Prime Minister, spoke during the presentation, saying that the growth of the cybercrime industry from $3 trillion in 2015 to an expected $10.5 trillion in 2025 means that if cybercrime was a state, it would be the third largest global economy after the US and China. That means the crime coming could truly be catastrophic. Rama cited the global response to COVID-19 and said a cyber attack would be much more substantial. Let's imagine that an exponential multitude of viruses that mutate every day exponentially while not threatening our body, but the bodies we live in, our organizations, our countries, our system. Then, it could be just apocalypse. It's about viruses that can not only block our way of living, but can control it and deviate it. And these guys, the World Economic Forum with Klaus Schwab and all his homies, they amazingly predicted the COVID-19 thing. It's uncanny. They wouldn't have had it planned or anything and unleashed it on the world at that particular time. So, I would listen to these guys because this is probably what they're planning next. Anonymous Chicago firefighter reports sighting of red-eyed winged Batman at O'Hare International Airport, by Tobias and Emily Wayland over at SingularFortean.com. Miguel Navarte of UFO Clearinghouse recently received the following report from a man claiming to be a firefighter stationed at O'Hare International Airport in Chicago. I work for the Chicago Fire Department and have been stationed at O'Hare International Airport for the last 7 years. This occurred on Thursday, December 29th at about 11 p.m. at O'Hare Station 3, which is just past Terminal 2 and next to the HVAC plant that sits across the street. I was in the middle of my shift, and as usual, I would bring my laptop with me to watch movies and play games on. I was just setting up my laptop when I realized I had left my charging cord in my pickup. So I got up and ran outside to go grab it and head back in. As I got my cord, I heard what sounded like a chirping sound, followed by what sounded like shuffling coming from nearby. I looked around, and that's when I heard the clicking coming from across the street. I looked up, and standing on the edge of the HVAC plant was a very tall, thin, human-like creature with huge wings that were spread out. This creature was looking directly at me with a pair of large red eyes that had the intensity of a pair of taillights or one of the lights on the engine. It just stood there and looked at me and made this rapid clicking sound. I was in complete shock at what I was seeing, and just how large this creature was and how enormous its wings were. They had to be close to 15 feet from tip to tip, and it had to be at least 7 feet tall in height. The body was thin, and its limbs were very thin and long. They looked like they would have been unable to support such a tall body, but apparently looks can be deceiving from what I was looking at. We stared at each other for about 6 to 7 seconds before the thing flapped its wings and silently took off into the air. And within a few seconds, it disappeared. I stood out there for at least a minute before coming back to my senses and realizing I should get inside. I think that's a good plan. I went inside and told some of my co-workers. Besides the gentle ribbing, there was also an air of caution, more than usual considering our profession. A few of them spoke up and said that this was not the first time it had been seen, and that it had been seen around the HVAC plant a few times by people and around the airport by hundreds of employees, passengers, and pilots. They say it had been seen by a few in the firehouse, but it never stuck around too long and was more content with just staring at you and scaring the bejesus out of people. You can't work at O'Hare for a length of time without hearing about the O'Hare Batman. It's particularly a legend in and around the airport, and people always claim to see it all over the airport. We spent the better part of 2 hours talking about these sightings, many of my co-workers sharing their own experiences. Navarte was reportedly able to sit down and speak with the man, whom he said is a 10-year veteran of the Chicago Fire Department and has been stationed at O'Hare for the last 5 years, and before that was in the military for over 10 years. He has been a lifelong resident of the city of Chicago and has deep family roots within his community. According to Navarte, the witness stated that his shift began as any normal shift would, and that there was nothing particularly of interest going on during that time. However, he said the man did mention that the weekend before he had seen record-setting low temperatures and winds that caused the airport to basically shut down. And the following week brought temperatures that were well above normal in the 60s and low 70s, and that the sky was overcast with light drizzle coming down on the night of the sighting. The man then reportedly reiterated the account featured above, adding that he also had an overwhelming feeling of being watched when he first heard the clicking sound and the shuffling. It reminded him of one of his children dragging their feet along. Navarte said that the man also claimed to have made eye contact with the creature, but when asked if he felt anything while staring at the entity, he stated other than obvious shock, he did not feel any feeling or dread or impending doom. The man reportedly described the creature to Navarte as thin and at least 7 feet tall with a pair of wings that were extended from its back. Navarte said that the man told him the wings must have been at least 15 feet in width and looked thin, like a piece of membrane. The man also reportedly told the investigator that the entity had arms and legs that were very thin and abnormally long, and that it was a shade of black that was so black that it stood out against the night sky. Otherwise, Navarte said he stated that no obvious features were recognizable other than the 2 eyes that were brilliant red. The entity reportedly then began to slowly flap its wings and took off by jumping off the building and flying away into the night in a southerly direction. When asked if it disappeared into the night, stated that it was visible because the black stood out against the gray sky, and that it was backlit by the lights of the airport for a few seconds before it was out of sight, Navarte said. The witness then added that he stood there almost transfixed for upwards of a minute before he decided that it was prudent for him to get inside and tell somebody about what he had seen, the investigator said. Navarte said that the witness told him that afterward he went inside and told his co-workers of the experience. He stated that besides the usual ribbing from his co-workers, there was a palpable air of disbelief among those in the firehouse, Navarte said. It was then that the man reportedly learned that the entity is dubbed the O'Hare Batman by some at the airport, and that it has been seen by members of the firehouse multiple times. The entity seems to like perching itself on the HVAC building and observing the comings and goings on of the firehouse and startling the members who work there. The man claimed to have been told multiple stories by co-workers of sightings and encounters with this winged entity. Navarrete said, "I documented all of them and have my contact information to the witness to pass along to his co-workers in hopes that they will come forward. I will detail these reports in another report to be published soon. Any new information regarding these events will be published as it is released." The chirping and clicking reported in the above testimony has been reported in at least 4 other cases. On September 12, 2017, a woman walking home from work reportedly encountered a black devil in Chicago's Little Village. On April 13, 2018, a couple in Milwaukee, Wisconsin reportedly encountered a bat-like flying humanoid with large glowing red eyes. On September 24, 2020, a woman reportedly encountered a 7-foot-tall red-eyed creature after leaving work at the U.S. Postal Service sorting facility in Chicago's O'Hare International Airport. And on April 28, 2022, a truck driver claimed to have encountered a giant red-eyed man-bat while dropping off equipment at work in Bensonville, Illinois. Each of those reports mentions a clicking or chirping sound associated with the creature. Chicago's O'Hare International Airport has been the epicenter of recent winged humanoid sightings in the Lake Michigan Mothman investigation. Over a dozen sighting reports coming from the airport itself since August of 2019, and many more reported in the surrounding communities. Reports from the larger investigation come from every state bordering Lake Michigan and date back to 1957. This report constitutes the latest news in a string of Mothman sightings from within a few 100-mile radius surrounding Lake Michigan, including every state bordering the Great Lake. These sightings ostensibly began in the spring of 2017, but more historical accounts are being reported on more people becoming aware of the phenomenon. They generally take place in the evening or night, often in or near a park or natural area and around water. Witnesses consistently describe a large gray, brown, or black bat or bird-like creature, although in a small number of cases the creature was described as insect-like, sometimes with glowing or reflective red or yellow, green, or orange eyes, and humanoid features such as arms and legs are often reported. Some witnesses have reported feeling intense fear and an aura of evil emanating from the creature they encountered. Many of the sightings are also of something seen only briefly or are described as a flying creature with few details, which leaves open the possibility that a misidentified large bird, such as a heron or a crane, or some type of anomalous avian creature, could explain some, although certainly not all of them. A number of associated high strangeness incidents have also occurred alongside the creature sightings. These include reports of UFOs, other anomalous flying creatures, and mysterious humanoids, and bizarre events experienced by those investigating the sightings. And to report your own sighting of this Mothman guy, you can contact the Singular Fortean Society. So thanks, Singular Fortean Society. And that's just about going to do it for this week's episode. Thanks for listening. God bless you, and we'll see you next week.